back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany and welcome to the first of the 12 days of Christmas. If you haven't seen me do this before, I've done this the past, I was gonna say a few years, but I think I've done this every single year on my channel in lieu of Vlogmas because there are many YouTubers and Booktubers, I think Booktubers call it Bookmas, where they do one video a day leading up to Christmas. And so that ends up being a total of 24 videos. And it's just a lot. I greatly applaud those who do that. I've always wanted to do that, but I've also recognized my limitations. Christmas is a very busy time for most people, but when you're in full-time ministry, that kind of even ups the ante in terms of holiday festivities, as Christmas is one of the biggest church holidays of the year. So instead, I decided to do my own kind of twist on that, doing the 12 days of Christmas, which are the days from Christmas Day leading up to the Epiphany, which I think is January 5th or January 6th. My brain's not braining right now. So anyways, I'm going to be doing one video a day through that time period. At least that's the plan as I am filming this. As you might have noticed the past few months, my filming and posting has been a bit more sporadic. It used to be 2 videos a week. Now it's lately been 1 video a week, sometimes 2 videos a week. It just depends. So with all the best intentions in the world, I'm starting off the 12 days of Christmas because there's always so much more that I want to talk to you about when we are getting to the end of this year and then starting the next year. Like, what are my plans for 2026? How did 2025 go? So it's a lot of times of reflection and planning, and I just love all those things and want to share all of it with you. So Merry Christmas. Hello. This is the first day of the 12, and today I'm going to be talking about goals. I was reflecting on kind of my plans that I had for this year and how that went in terms of how that might carry over to the next year. And there were a couple things that I noticed about my reading in 2025. One of those is actually a realization I've had every single year, that if I don't leave a little wiggle room to be able to insert books that I want to read, that I'm excited about reading, that aren't a buddy read, aren't a group read, aren't for any book club or anything like that, I end up feeling kind of burnt out and overwhelmed, because then reading ends up feeling more obligatory than a joy. And that's something I really want to focus on improving in 2026. I did do better in leaving room for mood reading, but I did not anticipate how much my reading was going to slow down this fall. It always slows down a little bit in September as I am, starting back up our homeschool group and all of that kind of stuff. But there have been a few other things that have been added onto my plate to this fall that have definitely decreased my time. And as a result, I have had less time to read. And so the only books I've gotten to have kind of been those obligatory books. And sometimes that can make me feel a little burnt out and make it feel like reading is a chore, not something I'm actually excited about doing. So a lot of the goals that I have for 2026 are surrounding that. They're not goals with like huge numeric parameters, but rather goals of things to help me start loving reading again. Not that I hate reading. I've just found that I've been really, really slumpy multiple times this year. That happened in the spring, and then it's been happening the past like 6 months, but I think towards the end of winter, like February through April-ish, I had like a good 6 to 8 weeks of like the longest reading slump of my life. And I was still reading because I had buddy reads and I had obligations and I had stuff, but I just wasn't enjoying anything I've been reading. And that happened again this fall. And so I really want to bring joy back to my reading. So a lot of the things that I have planned will be different from previous years because they're not really goals. I did do pretty well on my reading goals for this past year in terms of leaving more space for mood reading. That happened a lot. I definitely mood read more in 2025. And then I also had a goal to read 10 of my 40 by 40 list. I'll link that in case you haven't seen that. There are 40 books I want to read by the time I'm 40. And when I posted it, I had 4 years. So I really only had to read 10, and I think I read 13. So I'm cooking right along on that list, which means that I don't have to include 10 this upcoming year. And then I also had a goal to read 20 nonfiction. Normally I try to read like 12, but this year I wanted to read more, and I went through a huge like nonfiction phase where that was mostly what I wanted to be reading, so I actually exceeded that goal. So my goals for this year are relatively simple. One is to not overschedule myself. I want to make sure that I am definitely focusing on things that I do actually want to read, and there will be books that I read that maybe I don't enjoy quite as much. Like, I will definitely have book club books and I will have like Patreon group books and stuff like that that maybe aren't something that I'm loving, but I will still try to finish those because I usually lead discussions for both of those groups. So those will be things I'll be prioritizing, as well as buddy reads, but I'm only going to be scheduling like 1, maybe 2 buddy reads a month, and that's going to be it. So as a result, I am going to allow myself to DNF more freely. If it's something that I'm not enjoying, I want to give it the boot, and I actually started doing that the second half of this year, and it was really helpful for my reading life to not feel like I had to push myself through to finish something that I was hating. Also, in conjunction with enjoying reading more, I want to pick back up my commonplace journal. So I have a commonplace journal, which if you've never heard of that before, it's essentially just a place that you keep track of all of the quotes of books that you've loved, and I want to get back into entering quotes into that because I feel like it helps me remember the quotes more. It helps me be able to find them later, helps me just kind of like soak in if I'm really enjoying the writing of a book. So that's something that I want to start utilizing again. And so that will actually cause me to kind of like slow down in my reading and kind of pay more attention rather than just coasting through. My other big goal surrounding books in the year of 2026 is to read more of what I own. For a few years now, I have definitely been loading up my shelves, probably more than I need to, because I've mentioned this before. Where I live in a super rural area, and the library system just isn't the best, only because they're super limited on their shelf space. Like, none of the libraries in our area are particularly large, and the interlibrary loan is extremely limited. So I really have looked for books or found books at thrift stores or secondhand shop or whatever, and if it's been anything I've been even remotely interested in reading, I've been picking them up. And so towards the second half of this year, I started being a little bit more ruthless when culling my shelves to be like, am I really going to read this? Or do I actually want to reread this? If I don't, then I'm going to get rid of it. And so I want to make sure I'm focusing more on the books that are actually on my shelf as opposed to getting more books. So there's a couple different things I'm going to be doing for this. You may have noticed I shared a video, and I'll go ahead and reshare it again in the cards of this video, that I have a couple of other friends that are doing the same exact thing and wanting to read books from their shelves that have been sitting there for years. And so we're going to have quarterly live shows where we can check in on our goals and see how we're doing, and it'll just add like a little push of accountability. 2 of the people from that group actually host or co-host read-alongs focused on reading your books. So one of them is Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day, and she hosts the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge every year. She's been doing this for a while, and so each month has a prompt, and you pick a book from your bookshelf that has that prompt. Crystal from Fiber Artsy, she has where she's participating in a challenge called the Read What You Own Challenge. And so this is different in that there aren't prompts, but you pick however many books you want to read from your shelves before you are allowed to buy another book. And so you can have caveats, you can make it work for you. The traditional challenge, I think, is reading 100 of the books on your shelves before you purchase another book. I think I'll probably do like more like 50. That just feels more reasonable for me, but I will have some caveats in terms of all of that. So just so for accountability's sake, I'll share here what my caveats are. I will be allowed to purchase books if they are for a specific read along or readathon that I am co-hosting, that I don't already own the book or can't readily get it from the library. I also am allowed to take books that I'm unhauling from my shelves to a place like McKay's or secondhand bookshop and use store credit to purchase new books, as long as I'm not going over that, because those are essentially free books. I'm just trading books for other books, and most of the time when I do that, I'm usually getting rid of more books than I'm bringing back in anyway, so it feels like a wash, maybe even better than a wash, because I'm eliminating more books. This also doesn't mean that I will not be utilizing the library. I certainly will be, and I certainly will still continue to read books that I'm getting from the library, but I do want to be focusing more on the books on my shelves than getting books elsewhere. I have these super cute TBR scratch off cards that I found, and I think they're so fun. I'm going to be putting them in my bullet journal, so you'll see that in my 2026 bullet journal flip through, but I'll see if I can like include a picture of them here and have them linked in the description of this video. So essentially it works like, you know, a do-it-yourself scratch-off thing where you write the title of the book and then you put the scratch-off thing over it, and when you're ready to read something from that, you can just scratch it off and there's your book. So I'm going to be doing that, and I think that that will be like a fun, exciting thing. I'll try to make most of the books be a little bit on the shorter end so they're a little easier to pick up on a whim. I'm not planning to read like one book a month or anything like that, because I know that there will be months that I will be busy or have more than I'm reading and have a harder time choosing one of those books. January is one of those months actually where I already have quite a bit planned, but there will be months, especially the summer months when we don't have school going on, that I can easily pick up probably several of those. So I'm going to be prepping some of those, and I think that that's going to be really fun. I'm not going to be sharing the list with you because I want to be able to write them on there and kind of like forget what's on there a little bit, so I will actually be surprised. So that's the goal, and the plan is to do that, and then I can share those with you like as I scratch them off maybe. In general, I'm interested in doing more of a low buy year for myself. Obviously, there are things that we have to buy, you know, groceries, gas, clothes, you know, things that wear out, gifts for other people. There are things that we will have to purchase, but I want to focus on like consuming less as a person in 2026, even though most of the things that I buy are not new at all. They are things that I purchase from thrift stores or, you know, whatever, not just books, even other things, even clothes and other things. Most of the time are purchased secondhand, but I still just want to be more mindful of what I am spending my money on, and definitely less spontaneous. I want purchases to be more thought out and more planned. So that's kind of where I'm heading in general with book consumption, but also just regular consumption in my life. I am going to be tracking books that come in and out of my house this year, and that's something I've wanted to track in previous years, but just have not sat down and done it. So I want to actually do that this year in my bullet journal or elsewhere. I want to make sure that I'm keeping track of like what I'm reading on my shelves versus like new books in, because there will be new books. I'm sure there will be. People gift me books. I go to places and get books like McKay's where I'm getting them secondhand and I'm using store credit, and all of that's great and stuff, but I do want to be keeping track of how many books I'm unhauling, how many books I'm taking in. And last year I did count how many books were on my physical TBR and meant to keep up with that over the year in terms of adding ones that came in and taking away ones that I've unhauled, and I didn't do that at all. So that's something else I'm going to be doing to kind of help keep my eyes like on that prize this year. The last reading goal I have is one that I have pretty much every single year, and that is to read series. And I actually did a really good job of completing some series this year. There are quite a few series that I continued and finished, but then there were some that I started and finished this year. So I do have a few that I have carried over for several years. Like they have been in my bullet journal for the past like 3 to 4 years. And so I need to decide, do I actually want to continue and finish these series, or do I want to get rid of them? For accountability's sake, those series are the Queen's Thief series by Megan Will and Turner, I think. I read the first book of this years ago and never continued on. I actually don't own the rest of the series, so this would not be reading what I own, but it would help me to decide, like, am I actually going to continue on with this series, or am I just good after having read the first book? So because it's yours, I would have to reread the first book, but I do want to just, you know, I've had that in my bullet journal continuously. 2 series that I do own the next books in the series is Gregor the Overlander by Suzanne Collins. This is a middle grade series that she wrote before the Hunger Games, and I loved the first book. I thought it was so fun, so I went on and bought the whole rest of the series, partly for myself, partly for my daughter, and then never went on to ever pick it up again, and it's now been like 3 years, I think, maybe 4 since I read that. So I want to continue that series. And lastly is the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. Pretty sure this series is incomplete, and that has been part of the reason that I have not continued on, because I'm like, I won't even be able to finish the series. I think there are 3 books out now, And I think there's supposed to be a fourth book, maybe a fifth book. I don't know. I didn't really do research on that, but I do own the next book. And so at this point, I would probably have to reread The Lies of Locke Lamora before I could read, what is it, like Sunrise over something, something. I don't know. It's got a really red cover. Anyways, I do own book 2. And so if I figure out whether or not I want to continue on with this series, then I can read another book off my shelf that I've been sitting there for years, or I can just get rid of both of them and have more space because they are thick books. I do have a couple of other series that I started this year as well that I want to finish next year. So that will be part of that as well. I have a series tracker in my bullet journal, so that's always fun and satisfying to check off those. So those are my reading goals. I don't have massive Booktube goals. I did last year. Last year I had really specific Booktube goals, and some of those kind of flew out the window, and some of them I did totally complete, like hosting 2 Christian nonfiction read-alongs, doing more themed reading vlogs, which that did taper off the second half of the year, and that's totally okay. I didn't see the growth in my channel that I wanted to see, but I also wasn't consistent the second half of the year. And that was actually something that was super life-giving for me because I have always posted 2 videos a week for the entirety of my channel being around, and we are creeping up on 5 years of me doing this, which is really fun. Next month will be 5 years. So that's really cool and really awesome, but I had to have some wiggle room in my life to have a little bit of extra time. And so Booktube took a little bit of a back burner. I did still continue posting 1 video a week consistently. And then just the past like month or so, I've done 2 videos some weeks if I've had time for that. So I know that that is directly connected with my channel growth, because the more that you post, the more people see your videos, the more your channel grows. And so my channel really hasn't grown very much since last year, and that's okay. I'm totally fine with that. I want Booktube to be an enjoyable experience and not feel like a job or a chore, much like reading. Both of those things are things that I want to feel fun. And so as a result, I am definitely going to be more selective of what I end up participating in terms of Booktube events. And I was more selective last year, but I think I'm going to be even more selective this year. There's a couple events that I typically co-host, and I don't know how many of those I'm going to be doing this year. There's one for sure I'll do, and I am still planning at this time to have a Spurgeon read-along next fall, but I'm not going to plan to have a spring read-along. I just kind of need a little bit of a breather. It was a lot to do 2 of them last year, so I think I'll probably just do 1, but I'm going to continue to give myself grace to have flexibility in my posting schedule, and if that means 1 video a week, I'm okay with that. You all have been very understanding about that, and it's just been wonderful. So I really appreciate that as I've been adjusting to a busier schedule this fall. But in general, I just want my reading life and my online life to be more enjoyable and more fun and feel less like a chore. So all of my goals, both for reading and for Booktube, are surrounding that. Thank you for listening to this kind of rambly video talking about my goals, how I did with my goals this year, what my plans are for next year, because a lot of it's kind of loosey-goosey and is more of a feeling, searching for more joy and focusing on like what really matters and what I really want to get out of Booktube and out of my reading. So I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. What plans do you have for next year? Maybe you don't have any plans at all and you're just playing it by ear and you just want to enjoy your reading also. Maybe you have a lot of plans and you love to plan, because I do. I am someone that I am a planner and I love planning. I think it's so much fun. And so I love coming up with goals and plans, but I've learned that I don't want to be overwhelmed by those or kind of held captive by goals that then end up making things feel like they're more exhausting than enjoyable. So I'm learning, I'm growing. I feel like every year I get closer and closer to the goal of just not being overwhelmed and instead just having fun, because that's what this is all about. Reading is a hobby. It's fun. But planning is also fun. Planning is also a hobby in some ways, at least for reading. If you're planning for your hobby, then maybe planning is part of the hobby. You know, I just think it's fun. So I do still like making plans, even if the plans are more loosey-goosey and less like measurable and actionable. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me and also more 12 Days of Christmas content from me. And I will see you again tomorrow.